Time to start.
Is it time to start? Okay. Well, hello. This is the theater versus voice acting panel, or voice acting versus theater, whatever your preference. I'm Alexis Tipton, and
I'm Josh Grelle.
yes, and we are both voice actors for Funimation and some other places. We are also both involved in theater. We're actually in a play right now together, which is really fun. So it's perfect that you're here this weekend. To start off, how many people here have done theater? Specifically theater.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, sweetie.
That's pretty
really
cool.
awesome. Has anybody in here ever done voice work, even if it's just for fun, like any kind of dubbing, any kind of, like I know there's a lot of fan dubs on YouTube, that counts.
Public speaking count?
Yeah, public
absolutely.
speaking. Who said public speaking? Awesome.
Absolutely.
Who here has done no acting, no public speaking at all? Totally okay. Awesome. Okay. I just kind of like to get a feel of who's done what. No, that's real. That's impressive. How many people have done theater? Usually, it's like one person that's like. That's really just community theater or high school or.
Yes.
All that.
Yes and yes.
All that stuff.
All the stuff they don't pay us.
Yeah. Free theater. Yeah.
It also has a big film industry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Who here's done film? Any film commercials?
Really awesome.
Very cool.
That's brilliant.
Love it. Well, just to start off, does anybody have any questions to get us started? Is it just to pick a starting place? If you don't, I'll pick a starting place. It's very informal, guys, so seriously.
How different is it being in the studio with the microphone on? How just totally, well, it's kind of beyond that. How totally different is it?
It's totally different.
I realized that as I started talking.
No. Well, first of all, with theater, you're using your voice, you're using your body, you're using, I mean, the audience sees all of you. You know, whenever you are on stage, you can't hide behind anything unless you have like some sort of costume on that hides your face or things like that. In the booth, all you have is your voice. So some people consider theater more challenging, some people consider voice work more challenging because you have more to work with, but those are the main differences. Theater, to me, in my opinion, is also much bigger than voice acting is. It's much more, because, you know, you're far away from your audience, but they're still able to see you. So you have to be able to overcompensate for that distance. So everything is much bigger, much more animated, shall we say. Even if you're doing a drama, it's just everything's much bigger. Whereas in the booth, you know, it's just you and a microphone and a director, and you're not having to overcompensate near as much. But voice work, to me, is not near as subtle as film is. It's kind of in between. Film is the most natural, theater is the most, and then voice work, anime voice work is kind of somewhere in between.
Yeah, really kind of any voice work is kind of right in between as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be subtle and you can be, most of the time you don't have to be subtle at all, or you're expected to not be. To me, I think they both can be challenging, they're just challenging in different areas. Whereas, you know, in theater, I think probably one of the biggest differences between the two would be, in theater, you could be performing to a room of 70 to, you know, 300 or 400 people or even larger, but you're up there on stage and your job is to completely forget that they're out there, and you're going through something that you have hopefully been rehearsing for at least a month. And you also have to deal with the blocking and everything like that, and that's kind of really challenging, where the real challenge comes in. It is far more nerve-wracking to be in a little box where you're coming in and cold reading everything, and you've never seen it before, and you've got two people staring at you through a little window like you're an amoeba, and every other take is, okay, let's do it again. And that's really kind of where the major difference comes in for me.
Theater is challenging because, like you said, you have to memorize so much. You have to memorize what you're supposed to say. You have to memorize the lines of other characters so that
and
you know.
And hope that everybody else you're playing off of is
yes. You have to know how to ad-lib in case the person you're on stage with just completely goes off into left field. You have to know the script well enough to be able to hopefully get back to a familiar place. And you also have to memorize your blocking. You have to memorize, which blocking is where you are on the stage at any given time. The actions you do is all pre-planned for anybody that may not know. And you have to memorize the block. You have to memorize everything. You're blocking, the other character's blocking, so you don't crash into each other. And then, like he said, in the booth, everything is cold reading. We see it for the first time when we go into the booth, you don't get any prep time. I think some people who also write scripts get a little bit of forewarning, like you, because they see the scripts and then they, if they get cast in the show, they get to go in and perform with what they've written.
And then the director can bitch at you when it doesn't work.
Yes. But it's both of them provide many challenges. Cold reading can definitely be very intimidating and very challenging, and it's very rare that someone just right off the bat is an excellent cold reader. Like, it normally takes a lot of practice, a lot of time, a lot of just for one thing, just so you just don't freak out whenever you're handed the script, Because
Yeah.
it's very nerve-wracking. It's, I have no idea what's going on. What do I do? And that's our whole job, is cold reading. So the good news is we don't have to memorize anything, but
What sort of preparation can you do for the cold reading? I mean, that were,
Really good practice.
everything, but
Go through your house, just pick up a random, or if you're like at a doctor's office or anything, pick up a random magazine and just start reading. Like, turn to a page, find something, go. And
do
then
you like read it as a character or just read it?
just read it. Like, I mean, stick with your natural voice at first, but like, because I don't think I'd ever throw out a character if I was reading something in a doctor's office.
Well, no.
But I probably wouldn't be reading it out loud. But it's nice, like, if you find yourself like with a newspaper at home or a magazine that you haven't looked at in a while or that you've never looked at, and then on your own time, just pick it up, flip to a random page, and find something, and then go. And get used to doing that, and get to the point where it's like, start with your natural voice, and get to a point where you can perform and read that with your natural voice, and have it be as close to flawless or just kind of as seamless and very natural as you can possibly get, and then work on doing characters and do the same, and just go through the same process. That's a nice practice.
So is there usually a little bit of that whenever you go in to do some voice work? Like the first couple takes are just basically figuring out what to do, and then
Absolutely.
the director's going to know that's going to happen, sort of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're like any director that ever expects you to be perfect in a character that you've never really seen or read for when they come in is an idiot. So.
well, and then the good news is, at least at Funimation or any studio really, once you've been there long enough, the directors kind of get a feel for what you sound like, so they can kind of sometimes if we have a show that's got oh gosh, there's like 15 girls in this show and I can only pick 2. Help me, like judging by what you've heard me do before, like what are some characters that you would like to hear me read for? Sometimes you can get to that point, and that helps sometimes too. It's very helpful, but
And sometimes, after a while, at some points, like, we both have characters or archetypes of characters that we've kind of been typecast as over the years, and nothing wrong with that. It's great to be able to have people know that you can do something and know that you can do it well. That's not only is that just a great compliment in and of itself, but it helps pay the bills. And in anime, having an archetype in anime is awesome. Do it.
Well, I was going to say, and in acting in general, for those of you that are interested in pursuing any kind of professional acting career, be it equity, theater, or film, or anything like that, have a backup plan because it may sound like a lot of money on paper, but it's not dependable.
Mm-hmm.
And the acting world is extremely, it's a good word. Competitive. It's also very transient. It's everything that I do could go away tomorrow, and I have to have another way of supporting myself. So, we have a joke at Funimation that it's usually feast or famine. You're either doing a lot of different stuff. I could have, when it's really good, I'm working on 6 or 7 shows at a time. That's happened before, like as a lead role. Other times, let's see, around this time last year, it normally gets pretty quiet at Funimation. This year, it hasn't, thank goodness.
Yep.
You can go 2-3 months without work. And so you have to find something else to fill up your time. And that's why we also say that if you want to make money at acting, have a passion for it, because that will keep you
It's
from
a labor
pulling
of
your
love.
hair out. Yes. Like if you don't love acting, you're not going to love making money doing it, because it's not going to be dependable and it's going to be really frustrating.
Yeah.
And the love of it will keep you going when that happens.
Especially in if you want to talk about anime voiceover, kind of a running thing that we've been saying for a while is, on average, voice actors make about as much per year as the little old lady that says "Welcome to Walmart," but she gets benefits. We
Yeah,
don't.
we don't. Yeah, and
So-
by the way, voice work is what we call contract labor, which means that taxes don't automatically get taken out of it, so we have to be prepared for that come April, and we also don't get any benefits. So that sucks. But yeah, and theater, I've never done equity theater before. Equity theater is where you get paid to be on stage. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I've only ever done community theater, but you can make money doing theater, and you don't have to go to Broadway to do it. So that's nice too. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
One of the most, or are there any surprising or unexpected differences that you run into between theater and voice acting? Things that kind of surprised you that were different?
Well, the types of characters that we get to portray in anime work are definitely different from characters that are written for the stage. I'll say that much. So, you know, as I'm sure all of us know, anime is wonderful because you can draw anything. You can have any kind of circumstances happen in an anime because it's not real people. So the totally ridiculous can happen, and it's wonderful. With stage, you have a lot more limitations because it's actually you. So we get to do really cool things with our voices when it comes to anime because it's just so wow sometimes.
And in stage, you have to, if you're wanting to go for a character in stage, you have to physically also kind of represent that character. I may not be a 600-pound Hispanic supervillain, but my voice can be. So, that's the wonderful thing about voice work is if your voice can reach it, you can play any character. You can really explore the different archetypes out there. It's wonderful. That's why I love animation. That's why just voice work in general. Book on tape work or commercial work or anything that has to do with voice, you really get to explore. You really get to play. All of the people who live in your head get to come out every once in a while.
Yeah, stage is definitely a lot more limited for sure in terms of the types of characters you can play. A lot of times, if you go to a theater audition, you may be a wonderful actor. You may have, a great voice, great stage presence, lots of experience with the type of character that you audition for, but you may not get cast because you're too tall, or you're brunette and the character's blonde and you can't wear a wig and won't dye your hair, or it comes down to, well, you were really good, but this person was better because they fit the physical description. And in voice work, that's not an issue, so that's cool.
It all comes down, in voice work, it really just kind of all comes down to whether your voice was more in line for the character and if your acting chops were at the top for that character. So.
And another thing, with theater, it's, you get to spend a lot of time with your character. Like once you get cast, you get weeks, if you're really lucky, months to sort of sit at home with your character, learn your lines, think about every little facet of this character's existence. And in the booth, it's like, nope, just go.
Yep.
You get no time with the character. And so, people always ask, well, how do I become a voice actor? And everybody in the industry always says, be an actor first. And that is one of the main reasons. So you can build a character with absolutely no time. Like you know how to do it in a quick manner because time is money. And you can't take home the script and be like, oh, can I just look at this for a couple of days and then I'll come in and record? Nope.
Yeah.
You need to be ready.
Yeah, and thankfully, when you go in, usually the director will always give you kind of a quick rundown of what he thinks you need to know in order to make the character work. But still, that's just going to be a little maybe 30 to 40 second blurb of information that you then have to process and turn into a character and go, because time is money.
You don't have much time to cram it.
No. Yeah, and there is such thing as, they're always happy when you ask questions, just so you can solidify something, but there is such thing as asking too many questions.
Another thing that I would say would be a surprise between stage and voice work is that obviously you can't really physically emote too terribly much because I have knocked over a microphone, and you don't want to do that. But there's a big difference between projection on stage and mic technique. Mic technique takes as long as it takes. It might take you, for those who perform theater, as long as it may have taken you to get used to projecting and turning that into something that felt natural. Mic technique is just as time consuming and can be just as frustrating.
Yeah.
You really have to kind of learn the subtleties of what you're working with, and every microphone, depending on what studio, like Funimation uses a particular microphone for everything that we record in terms of shows, and there's little tricks that you can do in order to help the engineer out or to make something work for a scene. If I go down to Houston and record for Sentai, or it used to be ADV Films, they use a completely different microphone that requires a completely different way for them to set it up than the way that the Funimation people use it, and so you have to learn the tricks of that microphone. It's
Yeah. You know, it's things like, you know, if you're, I'm not actually gonna do it, don't worry, but the mic's not on. But, you know, if you're yelling or screaming as a character, don't ever do it directly into the mic, kind of go off to the side. And make sure the engineer knows that that's what you're doing so they can turn down the levels and no one gets their eardrums blown out.
ride the game.
Yeah.
It would affect the
Or
sound.
be careful of like P noises, because it makes a noise. Or
Yeah,
like,
plosives
yeah, plosives.
suck.
And so, you know, a lot of times we'll go like this with our fingers. Like anytime you do a P, you kind of go like that real quick, so it muffles it just a hair.
You almost have to come up with your own sense of blocking as you're going along, and it's almost improvised.
If you do anything where copious amounts of spit might come out, kind of, I mean, there's a guard there, but just in case.
Don't ever kiss that guard.
No.
You have no idea what's on there.
I don't think they clean it.
I've never seen them clean it.
No. Oh gosh, we were talking about this the other day. What are some of the other things that we do with the mic? I mean.
Sometimes you have to dictate distance, and
Right.
sometimes you can either adjust that before a take, or you might have to do that mid-take, where
Right.
if a character, especially in a show like Baka and Test, where everything is such a roller coaster
Manic,
of
yeah.
whatever, like you know, the character, you can be completely calm and just really think about something, and oh my god, something's exciting, and you have to be able to know when to back up, when to go back in.
Or like
It's a dance.
if anybody's seen Dance in the Vampire Bund, I voiced Yuki, who was also the narrator, and whenever we did her narration excerpts, Ian Sinclair directed that show, and he would have our engineer come in and adjust the mic so that I had to be like right here up on it to do all of the, and it's like, don't kiss it, don't kiss it, but like almost, like about, you know, that much between my mouth and the mic, and then whenever we go back to lines, it was normal. And they always say, you know, have like, what is it? It's like a two-fist rule.
Yeah.
Like have at least like that much between you and the mic. But yeah, so like depending on what you're recording, like your distance the distance between you and the mic can change, and it's really intimidating when the mic has to be right here.
And that also changes depending on the character that you're voicing, because like Faraki, he said back in Baka and Test, I was almost as far away from the mic as I could possibly be without losing any sort of quality, without it sounding boothy. But for most of the villains I've ever played, especially if I have to go into my lower register, I have to be right up on it. I have to almost be kissing the microphone in order to make that work. So
Which is really, it gets really awkward after a while.
yeah, it does.
You're like, I can't move, otherwise bad things will happen. So that's definitely something to get used to as well.
Yeah.
When you're in the booth, do you see what's happening with your voicing, or are you just talking to the microphone, director and engineer? Do you actually see the scene?
Okay, here's how Funimation's set up. Now, I don't think all studios are the same, and
Yeah.
Sentai is probably different. We have the mic in between, and then we have one computer screen right here that has the animation going live, depending on, you know, I mean, it's actually moving, it's not just a picture, of whatever scene we're dubbing, and then on this screen is the script, and the director has the scrolling capability and all that good stuff, and so then he just adjusts it. He may or may not, or she, highlight your lines for you, which gets really confusing. So it's this constant like ping pong match of like going back and forth and not moving your head too much to where your head goes too far away from the mic. So yeah.
Sentai also has a similar setup, but the microphone, instead of being right in front of you, is above you, and you don't actually put your mouth in the direction towards it. It records you from that position, and you have one screen. The script takes up the majority of the screen, and then there's one little section of it that is cornered off up in the top right corner where the video is. And then you get into the whole beeps versus chase method, which Funimation uses the beeps every 3 seconds before your line starts. You have 3 beeps that happen, and then on the imaginary 4th beep, that's when you start. With Sentai, the chase method, you watch the scene beforehand, and then you just do it. it goes back through, you have no beeps, you just kind of go off the animation cues and what you saw before, and then they adjust as needed.
Sometimes Funimation does the chase method, like
Yeah.
occasionally, but yeah, it's predominantly beeps.
And if you, depending on which one you've learned first, the other one can be absolutely horrendous to try and get into later. Another big difference for anime recording, we're going to have, you have to have the scene going before, and you'll have the animation with you, and you have to worry about fitting in the flaps. For prelay work, usually you'll have maybe just maybe a little bit of pre-animation, or you'll have an image of your character, and that's it. And you just record that, and it's a lot more liberating. Or like I recorded on Starship Troopers Invasion, and we just had a little bit of animation that hadn't even been finished, like the CG animation. And for the most part, they were moving around and had everything going. But sometimes it would just be a shot of my character standing there, and I would do a line, and then a couple of seconds later, it would switch to a different frame of him in a different pose, and I would have to change with that. And it's,
Well,
yeah.
and Dragon Age was the same way.
Yeah, Dragon Age.
Yeah, we did Dragon Age. Yeah.
A lot of different
Crazy.
stuff, and you have to be able to, and you never know what it's going to be. They might tell you beforehand what exactly you're going to be doing and what you'll be working with, but for the most part, you're just being thrown into it and having to adjust as you go.
And trust your director, because they know
Yes.
what's going on much better than you do. 9 times out of 10.
Worrying about the lip flaps, does that get easier? Is it always kind of a challenge? Or
It depends on the person. I've
It also depends on the show, because I know we've had shows that just, the way they were animated just does not work for the English language very well. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been in shows where rewrites were constant, because the
Yeah.
lines that were in the script just were not working.
if there's any show, any kind of shonen show, especially like Toei or Shonen Jump, has very Muppet-like flaps. Like, very rarely do they move super quick. It's always a rah, 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 and you have to be, and you can fit, like, in a 3-flap sentence, you can fit upwards of 6 to 7 words in those flaps. And so, like, you really have to, yeah, seriously, it's totally Muppets. Like, you have to, depending on the director and what type of pacing they want for the show, they may have you fit a syllable per flap, they may have you fit a word per flap. Usually we go with a syllable to several syllables per flap.
Well, and Funimation is extremely anal about fitting flaps. Like, they're very, very specific.
Yeah, you have to be spot on, perfect.
I mean, the
The
longer
scripts
you
are
do
very
it,
intricate.
yeah, and the longer you do it, I mean, I think for everybody it gets easier just because it's practice. You get used to, you find ways of, instead of going back and forth between the script and the animation, kind of, seeing the animation out of the corner of your eye and reading the script, or memorizing chunks and then just focusing on the animation. So, I mean, you definitely get a feel for it after a while, but it was challenging in the beginning, for sure. And we also have a thing at Funimation where a lot of people say that for new voiceover artists, like, it usually takes about a year on average for people to just get comfortable in the booth. That's usually sort of your warm-up time, I guess, to sort of get used to how things are done.
There was a panel a lot like this that I did with Christopher Ayers, if you know who that is. He's like, you know Chris?
Yeah.
He's like my brother, dude. I love that man. He directed theater for years and years and years and years and years in Houston, and is highly respected in Houston in the theater community there. He's been directing anime also for a while now, especially recently. He was recently made full time, which is awesome. And something it's nice to hear this from a director's point of view as well. I think it's relevant here. He told me that there's one thing that he's noticed bringing in people who have worked on stage primarily and bringing them into voice work. There's 3 types of people. You either have the ones, and they're all brilliant. Like on theater, they're fantastic and they're wonderful actors. And you'll have kind of usually these 3 results with bringing those people in. You'll have people who cannot fit flaps to save their life, but they're instantly comfortable and can perform no matter what and make it sound good. They just can't fit the flaps. Then you'll have the people who meet in the middle. They can kind of fit the flaps really well, and they can make it work and record. And thankfully, that's where a lot of people really fall is. And they're the ones that usually get far more comfortable with it and make it work better. Then you have the ones that can flip flaps like nobody's business, but they cannot make it work performance-wise because they don't know how to work within the confines of, I have to act and finish this within, before this mouth stops closing, otherwise it doesn't work.
They're very technical, and they're not, yeah.
Yeah. And some of them grow out of it, most apparently don't. So it's crazy. But you never know.
When you guys said that there's sometimes that you go months without work, is it like how much free time do you have to like maybe have a second job so you're not, when those months come, you already have a
For-
job?
I think pretty much every single person that I know of at Funimation has another job. Whether it's retail, whether it's another type of, performance, whether it's they're a director, or they're a writer, or, they work in a restaurant on weekends, or, I can't think of a single person that does not have a second job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like it's until for the last 2 years, every weekend I had a 30-hour weekend job that I worked just doing delivery. I recently was able to quit that because now acting, voice work has kind of become my part-time, and writing has become my full-time. So that's kind of become my secondary thing. But yeah, most everybody I know, with a rare exception of a few, because Ian Sinclair, amazing director, insanely talented voice actor. He does a lot of anime work, but most of his income comes from commercial, and that
Which is
dude.
technically a second job.
Yeah, that is technically his second
Yeah.
job. I mean, but it's all voice. Like he makes his living primarily and pretty much solely from voice work, but he gets it from multiple facets.
I hear him on TV all the time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be paying attention. I'm like, Ian, get off my TV. No, he's fantastic. But yeah, the people that have multiple jobs, but they're all like performance-based, are really lucky. But a lot of people also have boring jobs, like me.
Good question. Yes.
Yeah, actually, I've got kind of two. One leads into the other. The
Sure.
first one is about how long does it usually take to record a whole series? Some of them are ongoing, I know.
Like if you want to consider a series, like
Well,
mostly these days, like 13 episodes.
Where you would be this? How what stretch of time are you the same character? I guess is really.
Well, that depends a lot on the length of the show, and if there's 10 main characters, then obviously the line count is going to be distributed. If not, the characters aren't going to get near as many lines as if there were just 3 main characters.
Right.
We usually split it up by contracts. Like, let's say there's a 12-episode show. First contract will be like 5, 6 episodes. There may be, if you're a lead role, there may be 10, 15 hours in a contract. There could be 30 hours in a contract. It just kind of depends on what the line count is. I mean, they have a formula for it. I'm not even exactly sure
Yeah.
what it is. But the directors figured that out.
I'm trying to think of a good example.
Well, I mean,
Here's one: the Fafner movie that just came out. I can't remember the character's name, but I was given one of the characters that was one of the lead of the series. He's not very prevalent in the movie. You hear him occasionally, and then you see him at the end. I recorded my entirety of that part in this 2 to 3 hour movie in about 45 minutes. Kenichi was a 50-episode series, and I played Kenichi. The very first contract of about 6 to 8 episodes of that, it took me 10 hours a day for 2 weeks to record. But then
I did 10 hours on Google.
10 hours a day
Oh my
for
God,
2 weeks
that's what I
straight.
mean.
Yeah,
Ooh.
that was back when we were doing that. Like, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
we
no.
go from 10 a.m. to about 6 p.m. at night. But
Well, and depending on the character, like they try not to call you in for too long because it might blow up your voice. So
Kenichi screamed a lot.
yeah, well, that's why I was surprised. Well, and then like Blood Sea, I voiced Saya in Blood Sea that just came out. That was a 12-episode show, and I think for Saya, because she had all these little songs that she sang that were complicated because the translations were weird, and there were all these constant rewrites, which they do during your session, so they have to allow time for that possibility. I think the first contract for her, 6 episodes, was 40 hours, and then the second contract was 40 hours because she never shuts up. So.
Oh yeah, here's another one. Like, difference between Saya. You had Saya there, which is kind of the namesake. How many hours did you think you had for the first contract of Mizuki and Barband Test?
Probably like 25.
25? Okay,
Yeah.
so about half that. Still a lead
25,
character.
30.
She just doesn't talk as much.
Well, and then a
She's-
show that I can't talk about right now, that we just wrapped on. My character was considered a lead, and for the entire, I think it's only 10 episodes. The entire show, it was a 10-hour contract, and she was considered a lead role. But there was like 8 other main characters, so it was spread kind of thin.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it varies. Definitely varies. That's and another thing with voice work is you're never really going to know exactly how much you have coming in terms of income or in terms of hour work, even if you get cast in something.
Yeah, it's very unpredictable.
It's a roller coaster.
Following up on that, because like in theater you have this one character, it's the same set of this character through the entire rehearsal process, throughout the entire run of the show. But then in the series you talk about, you show up and it's usually the first time you've seen that script. And the very first time it's your first time seeing that character, but after a while you kind of get into the character. How different is that to get used to the difference there?
I found that I usually really get comfortable with the character after about the second episode. Second to third,
Yeah,
depending on how much they talk and how much information that I have or how comfortable I am with that archetype.
Yeah. And with voice work, it's also very challenging because when you're recording for your character, you may only see bits and pieces of the other characters, and so you just kind of have to like assume what's going on. You don't really witness their relationships growing because more often than not, I get called in to record as one of the first people, so I'm just in the booth basically talking to myself because no one else has recorded lines.
Okay.
So I kind of have to assume, okay, I know this person, I know how their voice kind of works, like, if I was that character, how would I say this line? Okay, well, how should I react off of that? And you just sort of make believe that it's in place, and then you react off of that character's written line because there's no voice there.
Yeah,
Whereas in theater, you can build those relationships with everybody else on stage.
And it's the same with prelay. And like with prelay animation, or in some cases with commercial work, I did a commercial 3 weeks ago, and it was me and one other guy, and we just played off of each other to make it work, and it was about 15-20 minutes of work. But it went by so quick because we just kind of got each other's energy and were able to feed off of it.
Right.
Whereas with overdub, or especially with anime, it's one at a time. I've only once in anime ever recorded with multiple people at the same time. It's always, almost 99.9% of the time, you're going to be in a void by yourself and hoping that other people have recorded before you that you can play off of.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like once you run into someone else's voice, it's like, I'm not alone anymore. Let's have a conversation. Yeah, really the only times that we ever record together in a booth, they're called Wallace Sessions, and there's usually 3-4 people in a booth, rarely more than that. 3-4 is pretty average.
Do you know what Wallace stands for?
Anybody
here know what Wallace stands for?
I'm not even sure what it stands for, but I know what it is.
It stands for with all actors.
That's right.
So basically that's just in a script that is a mark for whenever there is a gigantic
Like,
grouping of a bunch of background characters. Like if the main characters are in a mall, you want to have mall chatter going on in the background.
Or like
You bring in-
village chatter, or I think it was Bamboo Blade. There was an episode where they're in like this huge stadium of like 5,000 children, and so it was me and 3 other girls, and we all were just doing like ad-libbing little kid voices. And you can say anything. There's no script for that. I mean, usually depending on the show, there's some rules. Like Shin-Chan, for anybody that's seen Shin-Chan, I was in a couple of Wallace for that show. It's Shin-Chan, so anything goes. As long as you don't say something that's trademarked, you can cuss, you can do anything you want. But like Bamboo Blade, I think that was geared more towards like middle school age. So, no cuss words, no trademark phrase, no trademark things. Keep it clean, but talk like little kids. And in that instance, there's only 4 of us in the booth, but there's 5,000 kids in this stadium that we're voicing. Obviously, we're not going to do it 5,000 times. So what they do is we'll do all our whatever we say, whatever ends up coming out, and then we'll do it maybe 3 or 4 times, and then they'll double it up, and so it sounds like tons and tons and tons of children.
And then mix it down so you can't really
So you can't
tell
really
what's being
distinguish.
said.
Although sometimes you can, and it's funny.
Yeah.
Like now, because I know what people do in Wallace Sessions, now whenever I watch anime, I try to listen real closely to like the group chatter, because I'm like, oh, there's gonna be something funny in there.
If you own or can somehow find the DVD release release of a show called Puni Puni Poemi that ADV put out several years back. If you can find a DVD release of that, the commentary on that is one of the most insanely fun ever, because they'll stop the commentary in certain points, and they'll pull individual lines from the Wallace Sessions
Oh my
and play them one at a time, so you can hear what's going on in the
That's
background. It's usually
amazing.
mixed down, and it is hysterical.
That's amazing.
There's some insanely fun stuff going on now.
I think like Tower Draaga was the first Wallace session I ever did, and there was like, it was a scene where like a monster was attacking the village, and so we all had to be like screaming villagers like running around. And I think that this girl in the booth with me, I don't even remember who it was so long ago. Like a building got knocked over by this giant Godzilla creature, and so we're all like, like trying to like get away from the debris, and she goes, "I can't find my toe." It's weird stuff like that.
You know, people just be like, "Help! Help! I've lost my animation!"
Or what was it? Oh, Amanda Doskasil was it? I was in a Wallace session with her one time. I can't remember what show it was, but she was having a conversation with some girl about pantyhose, and she was like, "No, I'm not wearing any pantyhose. This is all natural. All natural leg." But see, and then like he said, it's so turned down.
Everything's
That
mixed
you
below.
can't, yeah, unless you're looking for it. Like chances are it won't jump out at you. But oh my gosh,
Yeah.
if you know it's there, it's magic. People are silly. Or sometimes I think we were doing another Wallace session and someone was like, "I need a Band-Aid," and I think it was with Tyler, and he stops and he goes, "Who the hell just said that?" And we're like, "Band-Aid?" He's like, "That's trademark. We gotta do it again." We're like, "It is?" Okay, sorry. So it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Have to be careful. It's kind of like, you can't sing. If there's ever a thing in Walla, we did a show recently, actually, I did one last week, where one of the characters in the show has a birthday, and all the guys in the school want to get together. All the guys want to get together and sing happy birthday. Well, here's the thing. The song Happy Birthday has been trademarked since like the 1920s by one little old lady and her entire family that live in like up in New England or something. And so that's why if you ever go to a restaurant on your birthday and they come out and they do their own jingle, because if they sing Happy Birthday, they have to pay insane royalties to sing that song. So we can't sing that in the booth. We had to write our own birthday song and come up with it.
Oh, for anybody that's seen Sekirei, we totally found a loophole for copyrighted music. There's a lot of things where all the characters are humming songs. Well, we would just we would choose songs that people were familiar with, but we changed like 5 notes so it wasn't copyrighted. So there's like the Chocobo theme songs in there, and the Skip It commercials in there. We had the Smurf song in there, but Mike made us change it. We got that one. But it's, yeah, there's all kinds of, but it's not copyright. There's like 5 notes that aren't the same.
Yes. I was wondering, do you, or how often or intensely do you research like the original voices, or?
Well, we'll be listening to them as a recording.
Oh.
Like when we get to, before we ever record a scene, we always watch it in the Japanese first. So you can get kind of a feel as to what the seiyuu is doing, and that is kind of a saving grace if you're ever recording in a void where nobody else has recorded before you, because at least you can play off of the energy of the Japanese actors. That's a saving grace.
Well, and when it comes to like fight scenes and stuff, they're like Blood Sea, prime example. That show is very quiet when it comes to battle noises and painful noises, and her mouth is doing stuff, but the Japanese just decided not to put stuff in there. So then we kind of had to make the decision of, okay, do we want it to be as, because the show's pretty violent. It's like, do we want it to be as quiet as the Japanese was, or do we want to go in and add more like fighting grunts and I just got slapped in the face noises and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's helpful to have, but it is helpful to have the Japanese for a starting point when it comes to things like that too.
Question?
Yeah.
What, all the characters that you have done, which ones were your most absolute favorites to do, to perform?
Oh man, I'm partial to all my characters. Of course,
They're like my children.
I'm just happy to get work, to be honest. Well, we were kind of talking about this yesterday. I really liked Mizuki in Baka and Test because she was just so high-pitched and adorable and sweet and fun. And then she also has, she's very high pitched, and I hadn't had a character, like a main character that was that high pitched before Mizuki, so it was kind of a challenge for me to have to maintain that constantly. But there's an episode where she gets drunk, and there's an episode where she, so there's some fun things that I got to do while talking freakishly high. Sai, I really, really enjoyed voicing Saya in Blood Sea. She was really challenging because her voice goes on a trip. So, yeah, I like everybody though.
Probably one of my most challenging in the recent years and favorites in terms of villains was Akasha in Corpse Princess.
You need more roles like that, bro.
Thank you. Yeah.
Dennis Hopper was that.
Do what?
Dennis Hopper was
Yeah, there we go. I'll take that. Most recently, I super enjoyed roles like Aki Hisayoshi, Bakken Test, or Komatsu and Toriko, which is my most recent. Those are kind of been my bread and butter, and I'm very, very comfortable doing those characters. I really get to I've got to the point with characters like that where I don't really have to think as much about the sound, and I can really just play. And those characters, it's some of the easiest work ever for me now, and I love characters like that, especially when they're so animated and super cartoony that I just really get to go incredibly over the top, and it works. So it's a lot of fun.
In terms of theater, what types of characters do you get to play? Like, what types are your favorites to play?
I'm playing a villain, man.
I know you are. Yeah,
That's awesome.
and the play it's so refreshing being able to talk about something before it's done. Because in anime, we can't breathe a word about our projects until the cast lists come out, which could be like 6 months after we finish the show. But with theater, we can talk about it all we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, you play kind of a douchebag.
Yeah.
Which is funny.
But he's a lovable douchebag, is he not?
Douchebag. No.
No.
No, my character.
I'll show you love.
My character and his character and another guy, we're in a love triangle together. Only it's not really a love triangle. It's just a love triangle because you're there. But
Yeah.
my character and this other
Love
character.
me!
Yeah, it's 1920s, very melodramatic. It's a murder mystery, and me and this other character are like, I love you so much, and he's just like, sorry. So it's really funny. But anyway, back to your question. I play a lot of ingenue. They're called ingenue roles on stage. But I love it when I get to play something that is not an ingenue. I was in a show a couple years ago called The Insanity of Mary Gerard, and I got to play a character that is batshit crazy. So that was really fun. I like doing darker stuff like that because I so rarely get to do it.
This is my first time, the show that we're doing right now is my first time back in theater after about 8 or 9 year hiatus. Before I started doing voice work, when I was doing theater, I would very often be just I would do character roles. I was very good at character roles. Now I'm in shape for the first time in my life, and I'm getting to play dapper villains. We'll see what else comes down the pipe now that I'm back into it. But my very first role ever was Gollum in the children's theater production of The Hobbit.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
It was awesome. My costume was the most ridiculous thing because it's a shoestring budget show, of course. So I think I came on stage, we had sewn and semi-stapled green thread to look like seaweed into a scuba diver suit. And I came out on stage with flippers, and it's just
I'm sorry, the image in my head was priceless.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, what?
That's pretty much it. The mental image alone is what makes that story.
The flippers did it for me, I'm sorry.
Big old flippers, you just hear this wet as I'm coming out on stage, and usually about.
In my head. That's why I was so funny. And I just imagined you being like, I precious. Walking really weird.
So what exactly do you mean by a character role? Just for him.
Character roles or character actor help me out here.
Larger than life characters, like
Yeah.
very, the character actors are normally like the goofy best friend, or because there's leading man and then there's like the character roles.
Yeah, it's another way to put it would be to say supporting character, supporting roles or whatever. But
they're always,
a supporting role can very often be, is still supposed to be straightforward and someone who has to worry, who will be very down to earth, real, whatever. Characters are the ones that can be over the top.
Yeah, there's something about them that's very played up, and whereas the leading man is very much like you said. I mean, more or less, kind of like on the straight and narrow. There's not. I mean, he may go through a journey, but it's not quite as manic as the character actor is.
A bro is a good example of a character. Like you get that. Yeah, man, let's just go down.
Like
we're gonna go bowling. We're gonna chase some women. And
well, it's like okay for anybody that's seen Romeo and Juliet, Mercutio, totally a character actor, or it needs to be played by a character actor.
Yeah.
Usually the character actors, if not always, are the comedic relief. Even in a comedy, they're usually the ones that are like so above and beyond everybody else's level of comedy. But they're great. They steal the show. Like even if it's a small part, they can completely steal the show.
Sometimes they're intricate to the story, other times they're just there to make you laugh. And you will always remember them regardless.
Yes. Yes. Very much so.
Yes.
Here's a violin.
So, in theater versus the voice acting, how much comparison do you get on, say, lead time to look at the scripts and kind of develop the characters and that sort of thing?
Well, are you talking about when it comes to auditions or just in general?
Once you've got the role.
Once you got the role. For theater, you get to spend as much time with your character. You get to spend as much time as you have to rehearse with your character, which could be weeks, months, and depending on how many shows you do, I mean, you are still tweaking that character even when curtain goes up and you've got an audience. If you're one of the lucky theater companies that gets 15 shows, I guarantee not all your performances are going to be the same. You're going to find other things to tweak, and there's just something wonderful about that. You reach a certain level of comfort, and then you're able to really explore without having to worry about, oh my gosh, are my lines memorized? Oh my gosh, is my blocking solidified? You can just go.
Yep.
And voice work, you don't get any time. I mean, you kind of pick up stuff along the way as you're recording through the show. Like, okay, by this point, I know that this character is really ditzy, so with this line, that's definitely something she wouldn't understand. I should make her sound very confused, or things like that. But yeah, you don't really get near as much freedom. Yeah. You have anything to
No,
all
that was
right.
it. You nailed it.
I nailed it. Anybody else? This side of the room is very quiet. Anyone else over here? Or anybody, really. Just have a question.
We've got 10 minutes.
Oh gosh, that went fast. Yes.
So in theater, what's one of the kind of craziest or weirdest things that have happened? Just
Besides one of the other.
Theater.
When I was first starting out, we did a melodrama in my hometown. I'm pretty sure it was written by someone in my hometown. So I can't even remember what it was called. I played 4 different characters in the show. Like the first one I played Zeus. I played an animal. I played a Chinese dude on a boat, and a gangster. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on in this play. Thankfully, nothing ever went wrong with some of the stuff I was doing. But one of my friends in the show that played a constant animal companion, the night of opening, was backstage in her costume and decided that she was going to do the splits for whatever reason, and ripped a gigantic gash in the butt crack of her outfit. And so Teddy Bear was showing some underoos the whole night, and the audience would not stop laughing. So they couldn't tell what was going on later down the road, because every time Teddy was on stage, they just lost it. So.
Well, for anybody that's involved in theater, you probably know what I'm talking about. There's something called the Macbeth Curse. Yeah. And anybody, I'm telling you, I don't care if you believe it, or believe it or not, just don't do it. Because in my experience, something bad always happens. There is this saying in community theater that if you say Macbeth, it is a very bad luck. If you say Macbeth during a show, something bad will happen. Well, there was some jerk in a show that I was brought in a couple years ago, and he was like, oh, it's so stupid. Macbeth. I was just being, a jerk about it. And that was the year that we did Peter Pan.
Oh, God.
And when Peter Pan flew through the window after this jerk had been spouting off Macbeth for 5 straight minutes, the wall of the nursery falls down and almost killed her. So I'm like, see, you don't say Macbeth. Just don't. And then I think, what else happened? I don't know, tons of stuff went wrong. Stuff that shouldn't have gone wrong. Like, it was not a coincidence. Walls don't just fall down and try to kill people. I'm
If
sorry.
you're ever at a convention with Christopher Ayers, ask him some of the horror stories about plays that he's either been a part of or that he's seen. No, I will tell one quick one on his behalf, and it has to do with Peter Pan. He was in the Broadway production of Peter Pan several years back. He was one of the Lost Boys. One of their opening nights, some new hire that they had gotten for tech crew was told to, just prior to curtain opening, to prime the fog machines to go for one of the opening numbers, because the pirates are supposed to come out not long after the play starts. And this person had never, ever really worked with a fog machine before, apparently, but had somehow gotten the job. Opening starts, and it starts with this bear character poking his head out, and you hear the audience go, oh. And he's supposed to come out and is foraging for flowers and stuff, and not long after that, the Lost Boys are supposed to pop up and go, get him! And chase him and try to capture the bear. Curtain rolls up, they're backstage, Lost Boys are in position, and you hear the audience go, oh. And then not long after that, everyone starts rolling in the aisles with laughter. They just cannot figure out what's going on. Well, one of the Lost Boys poked his head out, and the bear was on the floor, swimming. Like, he could not get any traction. He was just on the floor, could not move, and every time he got up, he would slip and fall. And it's like, they're just thinking, oh, well, they had hired a kid to play the bear, so they're thinking, oh, this kid's just being stupid or whatever. Their cue came, and it became Peter Pan on ice. Broadway show.
Oh my God,
Oh, here's the thing, they get down there, what had happened was the guy didn't know that he was supposed to put the fog juice in the machine. He thought he was supposed to put it on the stage and the machine would make it fog. So, the stage is littered with oil. And the thing is, the Lost Boys are out on stage, they're slipping and falling, and the music cue happens for the pirates to come. And it's about to happen. Here's the thing. For the pirates to look big, for these adults who were playing the Lost Boys to look like children, they had 6.5 to 7 feet tall men in spiked heel boots to make them as tall as they could. And so these gigantic pirates, pretty much on stilts, are about to come out and hit this oil. And so every single Lost Boy is suddenly just decided at the same time, throw yourself and just start wiping down Neverland. Thankfully, they managed to wipe down Neverland fast enough to get everything off. They come off stage after the pirates get on stage, and the Indians are supposed to come, and thank God they got it off before the Indians came, because the Indians come out and are doing acrobatic flips onto each other. And so thankfully they get off stage, and the director says, the person responsible for this has been fired. Get out there and clean else whatever you can, and then the show went as it usually does, thankfully. But yeah, that is a prime example of what can go wrong in theater.
Well, and I don't have a story that good, but we did Beauty and the Beast one time that the techs decided they were going to prank the entire cast on the last show. And so for anyone that's seen Beauty and the Beast, and even if you haven't seen the play, the whole opening song is the same. It's a village scene, and Gaston's doing his thing and whatever, and then there's that little interlude where Gaston shoots a bird and it falls down. The fool's like, I got it. Well, okay, so you hear the gunfire, and everyone's frozen on stage because that's supposed to be Gaston's grand entrance, and so they didn't want anybody to take away from his little thing. So you hear the gunshot, and then a goose is supposed to drop from the catwalk. Well, the goose drops from the catwalk, and 1,000 rubber ducks. Everybody's frozen, so we're all I'm just getting pelted with ducks, and it just kept going, and then all of a sudden, and then the goose just went, and I'm like, you can't break character, this is during the show. like So, oh my god, they got in so much trouble for that. But we were finding ducks under the stage like 2 years later. Because they had fallen, like, there were little ones, there were big ones, just falling in crevices.
Thousands of ducks.
Well, they were all up on the catwalk above the stage, and they all had buckets like this big. They'd spent $100
So they
on
did it on
rubber
purpose.
ducks. They did it on purpose,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
I misunderstood. I was thinking it was
Or
like-
one time we did, the man came to dinner, and there was a butler that's supposed to come out with a glass of orange juice, and we had this French door that was spring-loaded. Don't ask me whose idea that was. So he comes out, and like, he's trying to push open the spring-loaded door, and it goes, and like, knocks the orange juice, the glass shatters, and he goes, I was gonna bring you orange juice, Mr. Whiteside, but the door thought otherwise. And when that stuff happens, like, you have to be prepared to say something.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or Mr. White, that same show, Mr. Whiteside, he's supposed to be in a wheelchair, but he's faking it the entire time. So whenever he thinks he's alone, he gets up out of the wheelchair and is like stretching his legs. Well, he was on stage alone during one of the shows, and he's supposed to sit down really quick when his nurse comes back in. Well, he tried to do it too quick. And so the wheelchair like falls out from under him. He's like on the ground. He can't get up because the nurse is on stage. She's not supposed to know he's not crippled. And he just goes, Miss Breen! And she has to like help him back up in the wheelchair. And he has to act like he's paralyzed from the waist down. So it took 10 minutes to get him back on stage. This guy's like 6'2", and Nurse Breen was like 5'1". So stuff happens all the time.
Well, it is now 2 o'clock.
On
So
that
we killed the
note.
whole hour. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah,
and
thank
you
you.
for letting me practice. There's more.
Oh my god.
There's more.
Next time I see him, I'll be like, "Secret?"
Next time you see Chris Ayers, be sure to ask him about the Easter play where they went 3 Jesuses in one night.
Oh no.
Yeah.